Let's get this sports podcast party started, all right?
The JAYREELZ podcast.
What is happening, my good people? Greetings. How are you? How's it going? How's everybody doing out there? What is the latest and greatest? Hope everybody's doing well, feeling fantastic, in excellent spirits. A few busy days of sports means a jam-packed podcast for you kooks out there who can't get enough of all that's happening, as this is the JAYREELZ podcast with JAYREELZ. For my first timers, welcome aboard. And for those who've been banging with me going back to the very beginning, somewhere in the middle or even as early as this past Monday, I welcome you guys and gals back. And before we uncover the NFL, and now we have an interesting situation taking place at the University of Michigan with their head coach getting fired amidst some assault allegations and on top of an extramarital affair, which that sounds more like TMZ than it does ESPN, or not that I want to prop ESPN, but you know what I mean. That what's happening in the sports news cycle, of course the NBA, I'll get to all that, but I have to start off with the baseball. And the reason why I say that is because, oh boy, here goes JAYREELZ. He's going to go down on a soapbox about the Mets. He's going to go off on the owner, the GM, etc. Well, first and foremost, you're damn right I will, but it will be tempered a little bit. Because if you follow me on YouTube and subscribe to the channel, if you haven't done so, please do so at JAYREELZ on YouTube. Where yesterday I had a live stream, 2 hours, 12 noon each and every Wednesday. And pretty much I was unpacking the whole situation regarding Edwin Diaz. And while I was doing my live stream, the news broke down about Pete Alonso signing with the Baltimore Orioles. So you can only imagine what was coming out of my mouth yesterday. So if you haven't watched that, I would implore you to do so, because that is probably as entertaining, as spirited, and as passionate as ever will be, and probably will at some point, because this franchise does give me agita. Seems like 24/7, 365. But if you want to really get deep into me just lashing out at the franchise, definitely listen to that. But it's going to be tempered here a little bit, because I have come down from my high horse. And yes, I am still disgusted. I am still disgruntled and dismayed by the way this organization is handling things. And yes, I understand it's only December the 11th. I understand that we're still in the midst of the winter meetings, although they're going to close out today. I'm sure all the executives, GMs, they've already checked out of their hotels and are scrambling to get car service to get to their flights departing out of Orlando, Florida. But all I'll say is this, and I'll try to be as concise and clear, because again, if you really want the full version of everything that had transpired, I implore you one more time to go back to that live stream. But the only thing I have to say is I am not angry at Edwin Diaz, although he said he wanted to come back and be a member of the Mets moving forward, and that didn't happen. And I have a theory as to why that's not the case, which I could get to rather succinctly in a moment. And Pete Alonso, he was out the door when the Mets lost to the Marlins, if you recall, the last day of the year, where when he was asked that, oh, are you going to opt out for free agency? He said, yep, I'm opting out. So to me, it's not a surprise there, even though the Mets certainly undervalue him, considering that he did have a big year last year, hit 275, 38, and 126. I mean, listen, that's going to be hard to replace, as you know. But he pretty much had his sights set out, even dating back to last year, when the Mets actually signed him on the dotted line on February 12th, literally a week before the position players were to report down there in Port St. Lucie. So for those two players that I understand, mainstays on his team, Pete being a homegrown Met, on top of Brandon Nimmo getting sent to Texas for Marcus Semien, older player, I get it, better defensively. His offense could be and is on the downswing. So we can look at what the GM and the owner has done here over the first, whatever it is, since the end of the World Series, which was November 1st. So let's say 6 weeks. And yes, they did bring in Devin Williams, which was obviously a bad sign, because the theory that I looked at, and not only between me trying to piece this together, but also from some of the things that I read, was that the Mets went to Edwin Diaz after they signed Devin Williams to say, hey, we still are interested. We could put him in as the eighth inning guy, but we want you to stay on board. And I'm sure once he heard that Devin Williams was ink dry on the contract, where Diaz said, wait a minute, if you already got my replacement, why do I want to go back there? And I understand that the Mets don't have to contact Diaz ahead of time to say, well, hey, this is what we're thinking of doing, because he's a free agent. He's not a member of the Mets anymore. But it would have been a common courtesy, and I understand they did it after the fact, but it would have been common courtesy to say, hey, listen, we're about to sign X player. We still want you back. We're going to give you more money. You are our closer. Case closed. They could have done that to at least save a little bit of face, because if that's why Diaz walked, considering that he signed for literally $3 million more than what the Mets offered him, I mean, that's a joke. So Steve Cohen, he could have went up, and that's where I'm going to get on his case in a minute. That's where he could have came up and said, all right, I'm going to give you 3 years, $75 million. You think he would have passed on that? And who knows if the Dodgers, they probably would have matched and maybe gone above and beyond. Who knows? Because Diaz is getting deferred money, which, one more time, people, I don't want to hear about Bobby Bonilla Day anymore come July 1st next year and until 20, whatever the year is, 2032, 33. Because the Dodgers are littered with players that have deferred contracts. So if you want to say Shohei Ohtani Day, if you want to say Yamamoto Day, you want to say Tyler Glasnow Day, you want to say now Edwin Diaz Day, go right ahead. Because they got about 8 or 9 players with deferred contracts. But that's besides the point. I just had to throw that in there because for all these years with Bobby Bonilla. But anyway. So now you have a situation where Diaz walks $3 million more. And I said this weeks ago. I thought the Mets, it was imperative for them to sign Diaz more so than Pete Alonso, because closers do not grow on trees. And arguably, he is the best closer in the game, if not top 2, top 3. So with him gone, and then 24 hours later with Alonso to leave, and the Mets didn't even offer him a contract, which goes to show you how much they valued him, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, and how it was a scenario where Alonso was looking for the big payday, 7 years last year. And the Mets did offer, what was it, 7 for 158 a couple of years back, and he declined. Well, I'm sure he would have taken that, even though it was more years, less money. But at the same time, he still would have been a Met. He would have had all the records. And as it is right now, Soto's going to surpass him as long as he remains healthy when it comes to the home runs, and that record in particular, because I don't think he has the RBI record, etc. He may have, or he's close to it, but I think David Wright has the most RBIs in franchise history. But with that aside, both of those guys leave. Of course, as a Met fan that I am, I'm going to be sick to my stomach because A, they let Diaz walk for $3 million more. B, Kyle Schwarber, who re-upped with the Phillies 5 years, $150 million, which pretty much set the market. And remember, he's a DH. Which I understand that Alonso's going to end up being a DH when it's all said and done, considering he is 31 years of age. I don't know how many more years he's going to have at first base. And I would think that back 2, maybe even 3 years of that deal, he'll probably end up being the designated hitter for the Orioles. But it's still, how I look at it was that he left for $5 million more than what Schwarber got, and the Mets couldn't come anywhere close to that. They want to give him a 3-year deal and kind of give him more money, and that would have been it. All right, well, now that you've lied in your bed, or messed up the bed, I can't even say they lied in it. Because let's face it, the owner and the GM, Steve Cohen, David Stearns, they messed up the bed. So now they have to not only sleep in it, but they have to fix it. And now this is where I got to look at it from 30,000 feet, because now that that's over and done with, and yes, I could get on the owner and I could get on the GM. If you just allow me to do so for 2 minutes, unlike the 25 minutes at the start of the live stream yesterday. Another plug. I feel like with the owner, Steve Cohen, we've all been bamboozled as Met fans. Once Fred Wilpon left, we're thinking, oh, wait a minute. Now we got the richest owner in baseball. The guy is worth, now he's worth, I think, like $23 billion. So money's no object. And I believe it still is no object. But that ties into the GM, which I'll get to in a moment. But to me, I look at his tenure so far, as much as he said that in 5 years we're going to win a World Series or be in a World Series, whatever. Well, even if you take away 2021, because he bought the team, it was officially in November of 2020. And even if you want to take 2021 out, because 2022, that's when he brought in Scherzer, that's when he made a lot of those deals, Starling Marte, going down the list. So this is year 5 upcoming. They got 2 games within the World Series last year, or now 2 seasons ago. And now, here we are, left for pretty much almost dead. And yes, I get it. We're still in the early part of December to where there's still plenty of offseason to go. But for Steve Cohen, where him getting Juan Soto is the one thing that he can put on his resume and can puff his chest out and flex to every other owner in the sport. But what has he done since? He hasn't done anything to at least stamp his approval to say, okay, there's this guy I want or that guy I want. And I understand he's not going to be George Steinbrenner. But with that being said, let's say with Alonso, if Stearns said no, it's not fiscal, even though this is our plan, so on and so forth, But he could have said, no, you know what? I want Alonso. He's an original Met. He just broke Darryl Strawberry's home run record. And I understand you can't get all sentimental. And he's probably going to decline as far as a first baseman. And he's obviously not a great first baseman to begin with, or even a very good one for that matter. But that's a guy that you're going to put number 20 in the rafters. He's going to be in the Met Hall of Fame. Who knows if he can ending up in Cooperstown one day. Highly unlikely, but you never know. Well, now that all's gone, and to me, that's where Steve Cohen, although he wants to just put everything on the plate of the GM, but he could have stepped in and be like, this is the one guy I want. All right, Diaz, we got to live with, or he could have done the same for Diaz for that matter. Obviously, that's not the case. So it shows that although he flexed his muscles that one time with Soto, but let's face it, if I owned the team and I had that much money, I probably could have signed Juan Soto as well. So that's number one. So I feel like I've been bamboozled with him because with all his money and his bluster and, we're going to make the Mets winners, and I'm a Met fan for life, so on and so forth. My wife's a big Met fan, my father-in-law, and what has it gotten us? Nothing. So now with David Stearns. Here's a guy that literally grew up a stone's throw and a shadow from the former Shea Stadium to now Citi Field. Born in Manhattan, Queens guy. You can talk about I'm New York in the blood and the bones, whatever, but he's certainly not acting that way. And I get it, that there has to be some sort of financial responsibility. You just can't go like drunken sailors, although how's that working for the Dodgers right about now? But with that being said, and even with Cohen saying that he wanted to be like the Dodgers or have that type of model, well, he's certainly going the other way and not going the Dodger route. But I digress, we're talking about David Stearns. So now as far as Stearns goes, his mid-market, small market mentality Milwaukee, the team that he built there, and he can talk about how, we got a lot out of these type of players or bang out a biggest bang for our buck and all this other nonsense. But what has that gotten him or those Brewer teams? All right, trips to the playoffs, but I don't see any rings or any banners hanging at that field at Miller Park, or formerly known as Miller Park, as far as them winning a National League pennant or a World Series championship. None of that. And for him to lay the foundation, and especially over these last couple of years where he got away with the starting pitching 2 years ago, and last year it just blew up in his face. So the one thing that I have, if I'm a member of the media, and even though I don't have the credentials or whatever, but one day, I would love to ask David Stearns, what is the plan? And don't give me this mumbo jumbo, vague, just blanket, we have some deals in place, or we have things in the works, or whatever. Right now, he's going to have to pull a royal flush, 2 aces up his sleeves, and maybe a rabbit out of his hat in order to just invigorate this fan base, or maybe even reinvigorate the fan base, to the point where it's like, what are we doing here? Like, what is the plan? This is New York. This is a team that's been starving for a championship. So what's going to happen here? And this is why I temper it, although I have obviously that passion in the voice. But I'm going to temper it today because we're not going to know what the plan is until it unfolds right in front of our eyes. Or unless there are going to be rumors. And now we're going to have to wait and see. David Stearns is on the clock as far as GM of the New York Mets right now. And if he does not deliver this year, and who knows, if he doesn't deliver the following year, his ass is going to be on the street. And as it is right now, considering what happened last year, he cannot be negligent with this roster. Because now that you got Alonso, Diaz, and even Nimmo, and I understand you got to bring back Semion's contract, but it's a situation where let's see how you're going to construct this team now. That I hope it's not a knee-jerk reaction. I hope it's not going for a player that's already washed, a la, and I don't want to use this guy's name, but wouldn't it be typical that, we need a center fielder, so they bring in Mike Trout for 40 cents on the dollar, but in the process they give up Nolan McLean and Jet Williams and Ronnie Mauricio, and you're standing there thinking like, if this happened 7 years ago, fantastic. But the Mets don't need Mike Trout. They need a center fielder, but not a guy who's literally been breaking down over the last few years. And I'm not going to bank on the what if he's healthy. So that's just an example, people. I'm not saying that's a rumor or whatever. If it gets aggregated, so be it. But the only thing I'll say about Stearns, and even to tie in with the owner, is this. They wanted people to go to the ballpark last year after them signing Soto and the fringe signings of the Griffin Cannings and the Frankie Montoses and all that. Okay. The people showed up. They came out in droves, record-breaking numbers, over 3 million, etc. Now, what do you expect the fan base to do? And in fact, in typical Met fashion, after the news broke the last 2 days with Alonso and Diaz, what happened? They sent out invoices for spring training tickets for those who want to go down to support St. Lucie. Are you serious? Are we kidding? Is this a joke? I mean, these are the Mets. You can't make it up. So to think, in closing, so I can move on to other things, let's see what David Stearns is going to do here. Because right now, there are an overwhelming, including yours truly, amount of Met fans that have a watchful eye on what he's going to do from now until pitchers and catchers report sometime in mid-February. And I understand he's not going to be able to do it one fell swoop, or maybe he will. And that's what we're going to be hopeful for. Because right now, I have no hope for this team next year. And I understand it's early in the process, like I said. But considering the way that this organization has been run, dating back to the Wilpons just 5 years ago, and then now what we've seen so far. And it's not as if the owner hasn't spent money or hasn't tried. But now it almost feels like it's the Wilpons 2.0. It almost feels like we're going to have to pinch here and save there and not go all out here and not do this and not do anything drastic. No, it has to be within the confines of their way the team is going to be constructed. Because as much as Steve Cohen said, oh, the model of success is the Dodgers, we want to emulate that, they haven't done anything close to what the Dodgers have done. And if they could somehow, some way win one World Series, let alone back-to-back the way they have done over the last 2 years, and it looks like they're going to be on the verge of a three-peat, it is going to be just another City of the Walking Dead wasteland out in Flushing until God knows when. And with the 40th anniversary of the 86 team next year, it looks like it could be another 40 years before we even see anything close to a World Series championship, unless they wake up and something gets done, hopefully, starting right now. And to think, this week, with the winter meetings and the hot stove, whatever, if it wasn't for the Mets, it'd be ice cold. What, the Tigers re-signing Kyle Finnegan? You haven't heard really any rumors, I know the Mets even brought up, I can't even believe I'm going to say this. They've actually thought about or considering bringing in Paul Goldschmidt to play a platoon at first base with Jeff McNeil. I mean, come on. Can you make it up? This is a thing where they want to poach ex-Yankees now. From Devin Williams to Clay Holmes to Frankie Montas. Juan Soto. What's next? So now they want to bring in Goldschmidt. They brought in Devin Williams. They may even bring in Cody Bellinger when it's all said and done. Really? Does David Stearns have that much of an affinity for the Yankees? Maybe he's a Yankee fan, or maybe Steve Cohen is a Yankee fan and he just wants to do what George Steinbrenner did back in the day when he brought in Doc, Darryl, David Cohn, etc. Maybe this has now come full circle where the Mets are now just poaching all the Yankees. But anyway, as far as the hot stove, it's been rather cold, and if it wasn't for the Mets, listen, you'd barely have a flicker or any type of gas that's cooking. But that's what you have there, and I don't think there's anything else that has come up here since then, as I'm recording this night now in the early afternoon on Thursday. So that's what you got with the baseball. I'll be on top of this as we move it along, and we'll see what happens here, and I'll be all over what the Mets are going to do. So stay tuned to the channel, because I'm going to post my daily shorts and my instant reactions to all this. So please, if you haven't tapped in or locked in, please subscribe to the YouTube channel at JAYREELZ. I would sincerely appreciate it. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers too by January 1st, which is 21 days from now, or 21 days. So really 3 weeks from today. So if I wake up and I see 1,000, I'll be ecstatic, and I have to thank you all. And for those who have surpassed 800 just recently, thank you for hopping on board and subscribing. So I'll say that. All right, now let me get to the NFL here as I put on the helmet and shoulder pads. And the NFL has some very good games on the schedule. Terrible game tonight. In fact, all the primetime games are awful. So tonight, Sunday night, Monday night, not good. Maybe Monday night, there's going to be that in the hunt and all this nonsense with Miami and Pittsburgh. But I'm not buying that. The Dolphins, there's no way. And how I look at the schedule, you got 5 good games in the 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock windows. And just like I said, pretty much at the halfway point, where after week 10, where everybody had played 9 games, I thought that, is there going to be any interest? Is there going to be a race of some sort? And I'm not talking about jockeying for playoff positioning. I'm talking about teams that are trying to get into the wild card, that maybe you got 3 or 4 teams fighting for 1 spot in the AFC or 3 fighting for 2 in the NFC. In the AFC, you can forget it. Now, I understand Indianapolis is still hanging around. I'm going to get to them in a moment because that's going to be my perfect segue. With Indianapolis, the only team in the AFC that has any shot to get in as a wild card. I get it that they're going to fight for the division, considering that they're tied with Houston right now, although Houston has the tiebreaker in the division where Jacksonville's in first place. But for the Colts, right now at 8 and Houston's at 7, the only way, if Houston's going to sweep the Colts, you can forget about it. They're going to be done. I can't include the Ravens right now. They're a game under 500 and 2 games back. They don't have tiebreakers against the Chiefs, who they're tied with at 6 and 7, and the Chiefs aren't going to make it too, despite a couple of easy games on their schedule, Tennessee and the Raiders in particular. But the Dolphins were also 6 and 7, muddled in with the Chiefs and the aforementioned Ravens. I only see those 7 teams, and if the Colts continue to skid and they go to Seattle this week, which is one of the 5 games on the schedule, and chances are they're probably going to lose in the Pacific Northwest, then you can pretty much forget about it. You're going to have the 7 teams already locked in the AFC, and it's just a matter of who's going to go where, and maybe somehow, some way, Baltimore finds a way to get to the top of the AFC North, win a division, and then they'll take over, because the Steelers aren't going to be a wild card team either, considering what their record is, and they don't have tiebreakers over certain teams. So Chargers in particular, but the Chargers have a 2-game lead on them now, so I'm not even going to worry about that. And in the NFC, it's pretty much the same deal. Although the Lions, right now on the outside with the 8th seed, and with San Francisco at the 7, they're a game behind San Francisco right now. Now, they don't play one another, but the Lions can get into the playoffs by way of a tiebreaker with the Bears, because the Bears are currently at 7. I should say they're 7th, where the Niners are 6th. Because remember, the Bears, who had the 1 seed prior to the game against Green Bay on Sunday, after that loss, they fell all the way down to the basement in the NFC playoff picture. So think about this. If the Bears at 7, Lions at 8, if they are able to be at least 1 game back of the Lions going into Week 18, where Detroit will have to go to Soldier Field to play the Bears, and remember, they beat Chicago in Week 2, then they'll have a shot to get into the postseason. So, although it's a scenario where they have a very tricky schedule, the Lions, they got to go to LA this weekend, another one of those big games that are going to take place. They host the Steelers the week after that, where the Steelers are going to be trying to fight for, well, you can say their lives, because they don't want to have the Ravens sneak up on them. Although the Ravens schedule is tricky. Bengals, they got to go to Cincinnati this week, and with Joe Burrow at quarterback, anything can happen there. They have to go play at New England. They play, New England goes to Baltimore, then at Green Bay before going to Pittsburgh. So certainly a very dicey schedule for the Ravens. But as it is for the Lions, and then they go to Minnesota after they play Pittsburgh, and divisional road games, as I said a million times, never easy, and then the Soldier Field. So the last 2 games on the road, and certainly a very bumpy schedule for them. But if they could survive that, maybe win 2 or 3. Now the Bears schedule is tricky in their own right. They play San Francisco, they play the Packers again the week after that, and then they have the Lions, and the game in between, off the top of my head, I have to think who they play. I believe they play the Browns. As a matter of fact, they play the Browns this week, San Francisco the following. No, Browns, Packers, Niners, and then Lions. So certainly not easy for them either. So I could see it being a thing where whether they're tied or 1 game behind the Lions, that in essence is going to be a win-or-go-home game, which could be the Sunday night game if it falls that way to conclude the regular season. So that is pretty much your playoff possibilities. But I got to go back to Indianapolis for a second, because that was my segue. But, of course, I had to go from AFC to NFC all over the map here. So the Colts, as we know, no Daniel Jones, blew out his Achilles there in the game on Sunday against Jacksonville. And then with the backup Riley Leonard, the kid that played in Notre Dame last year, who has a knee issue, and chances are he's not going to play this week. You have Anthony Richardson, the number 4 pick overall a few years back, who, let's face it, has been a bust. He can't stay healthy. But not only that, he had that shoulder injury heading into camp, or I guess suffered it during training camp, and then had an accident where he was using resistance bands, and I believe it hit him in the eye, so he's on injury reserve. Just a disaster. But it gets better, because Shane Steichen, who has a relationship with Phillip Rivers, yes, that Phillip Rivers, the longtime Charger quarterback who ended his career in 2020 as an Indianapolis Colt, he decided to dial him up and say, hey, what do you think about coming out of retirement? So they actually signed him to the practice squad, 44 years of age, hasn't taken a snap in 5 years when they lost that playoff game in Buffalo, and now You expect this man to come in here and try to save their season? Where, God forbid, he takes one hit, and he's a big guy, he's 6'5", whatever, but is he in any way, shape, or form close to playing shape, let alone game shape? I mean, I'm sure I saw the press conference. I mean, he looked the same. Maybe his face was a little bit fuller, and I'm not judging, I'm just based on what I saw, but at the same time, you might as well try to call Andrew Luck back, or dare I even say Peyton Manning. Now, of course, Manning's older than Rivers, but I mean, they couldn't find somebody else off the scrap heap. And I know people say, what about Colin Kaepernick? I'm not going to go down that road. And Kaepernick, obviously, we haven't heard from him in quite some time. Same for Rivers, for that matter. But because of the relationship, again, between the head coach and the former quarterback, or now you could say he's not even former, he's back on a roster as of right this moment, on the practice squad, that is. But, I mean, you can't make it up. And I get it. They've had a very good season to date. But they started 7-1. They've skidded here to where they've lost 4 of the last 5. Well, let me make sure I got that right. Yeah, lost 4 of the last 5. They're 8-5 right now. And yes, the playoffs are slipping right through their hands. So you mean to tell me you want to unretire a guy who hasn't played in 5 years to all of a sudden be the guy that's going to lead you to the postseason? Ugh. I don't know. To me, that is desperado. That's not even desperate. That is desperado. So good luck with that. And as it is, then I see this. Tampa, I know they brought in Jason Pierre-Paul to be a part of that pass rush. Now, I don't know what he has left. Granted, he's been on a roster within the last 2 or 3 years, maybe even less than that, 1 or 2. But Rivers, they might as well sign me to be the quarterback. I'll hand it off to Jonathan Taylor for about 50 times a game. And yeah, just screen passes here, screen passes there to avoid the rush, and away we go. But that's what you have there with the NFL. And as far as the schedule there on Sunday, I gave you a clue on a couple of games there. Tonight, Atlanta, Tampa, Now, I understand Tampa because they're part of the playoff mix, considering that Carolina, who they're currently tied at the top of the NFC South. So it's a game you do have to pay attention to, only because the Buccaneers are trying to fight to stay ahead of the Panthers here in that division. But tonight is that game on Prime. Then you have the other big games to note. Chargers going to Kansas City, so they could certainly put the Chiefs out the pasture with a loss. I don't think the Chiefs are going to get in anyway, but whatever last-ditch effort that the Chiefs have to kind of put their season, at least on life support as it is, but maybe to put their head above water for at least 1 week, this is an absolute must-win for them. Buffalo, New England. Now, this game is a little overrated only because the Patriots have a 2.5-game lead. Remember, they got the first win in Buffalo earlier this year. So for people thinking, oh, this is a big game, it is not. Because even if the Bills win, they'll be a game behind. I understand that. And I got to look at divisional records and so on and so forth from that regard. But the Patriots are still in good stead. I could see if they were 1 game back and then, there would be a bigger game. But it's 2 games. I mean, Now, yes, it's a game you want to pay attention to. 2 very good teams in the AFC, obviously in the same division. But I'm not going to say, that is an absolute must. You got to watch. That's going to be for 4 quarters. And it could be, but come on. Patriots have at least a comfortable lead that if they lose, they're not going to have to feel the breaths of the Bills breathing down their necks. Then you have Green Bay at Denver is your 4 o'clock game or the 4:25 game. And Detroit, LA. So the Rams, that's going to be tricky to see which one you want to watch out of those 2. I think out of the 2 games, Lions and Rams, because the Lions are fighting for their playoff lives here. They can't afford to lose a game like that. So I think that's the more imperative game. If Green Bay loses, and if Denver loses, I get it. They're currently the 1 seed in the AFC, but still, even if they lose and New England wins, they'll be a game behind, and they still have a shot to win a 1 seed and have a bye when it's all said and done. But the other games, not really get crazy about. Cleveland at Chicago, we know Chicago as far as what we talked about earlier with the NFC playoff picture. Baltimore, Cincinnati. Baltimore trying to survive there in the AFC North. Washington at the Giants. No Jaden Daniels. He's out again. Their season, boy, you talk about a terrible season that's just gone the other way from what we saw last year. Vegas at Philly. Now, this is an enormous game from this regard. As much as you could be surprised by this little run of losing by the Eagles here, as they've lost 3 in a row after starting off 8-2. And with the Cowboys at 6-1, and I don't think the Cowboys are a threat just yet. But if the Eagles lose this game to a Raider team that hasn't won in forever, then I'd be worried. Because for everybody that wants to bench Jalen Hurts, and I mean, seriously, now he had a putrid game. 5 turnovers, had 2 turnovers on 1 play, threw an interception, then the ball was fumbled, he recovered it, and then he fumbled it again. And then when the Eagles were driving in overtime down 22-19, when they're at the goal line, he throws an interception. Right there in the shadow of the goal line. So yes, he's allowed to have a bad game. So I'm not going to say to him, oh, Jalen Hurts is no good, he's this, he's that. Now, we understand the offense has not clicked this year. 100%. But they still have, I understand, 1 game and a loss. But what's more important is they have 2 games ahead of them in the win column because of that tie that the Cowboys had, as I've said, week after week. And I understand Minnesota's playing in Dallas. You would think the Cowboys are going to win. But I'm not going to scream, moan, or be overly concerned about the Eagles unless they lose on Sunday to the Raiders. Jets at Jacksonville, Arizona at Houston, Carolina, New Orleans, Tennessee, San Francisco. And that's pretty much your schedule, people. So that's your NFL as constituted. Now, I'm not going to get into the college football. We'll wait till next Thursday because the playoff will start a week from tomorrow. And we know about the rankings. We broke that all down on Monday. Notre Dame, blah, 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 so on and so forth. But you did get some news yesterday out of Ann Arbor to where Sherrone Moore, the head coach, who 17-9, got suspended a couple of times here along the way. And then last night was terminated immediately based on an inappropriate relationship that he's had with a staff member, on top of this guy, and listen, I'm not the morality police in the least, but married, I believe had 3 kids, or maybe, I don't know, from what I heard is that I believe his wife is currently pregnant with another one on the way. This is an Ime Udoka situation, but even worse, considering that, and I say worse because although Udoka was involved, and I believe was engaged, I don't think he was married, but certainly obviously had this affair with the actress Nia Long, one of my favorites, I might add. But here's a scenario where not only did they terminate him getting involved with the staff member, but he was also arrested last night for an alleged assault where we're still trying to get the information as it comes in. I believe he's still detained. Now, again, he's been let go by the university, so he's not coming back. It's over and done with. But now Sherrone Moore has even a mountain of issues that he has to get through, more so internally than externally. And again, I am not a professional. I'm not trying to analyze this or psychoanalyze this in any way, shape, or form, or even try to become the morality police, but he's got to answer to that. And who knows where that's all going to unfold, but that's none of our business. But now that he's out as head coach, where do the Wolverines go for their next head coach, considering that all these head coaches have gone all over the map, from Lane Kiffin, the Tulane coach? I mean, we could go everywhere. I mean, so many people have hired coaches everywhere that, where does that leave the University of Michigan? The first person I thought of was Urban Meyer. And I understand it could be a bit of a reach because he did coach at Ohio State and won a national championship there. And I know that you'd have to pinch your nose if that's the case if you're a Michigan fan. But who else do you want? Do you want Brian Kelly, who obviously got jettisoned out of LSU and certainly is a guy that could rub people the wrong way? I don't know if you want to go for Jesse Minter, who my guy Jay in Michigan would like to have, and considering he's on Jim Harbaugh's staff out in LA, that maybe put in a good word. Minter could be the guy, but I'm sure at the same time he doesn't want to let go of a young defensive coordinator that he has on his staff. You know, all of a sudden he's just going to say, hey guys, you can take my guy. Absolutely not. But who knows? Strange things have happened. Maybe he'll say, you know what, hey, this is the guy you want to hire. He's a great guy. He's going to recruit, whatever. Fine. But there aren't that many other guys left. You're not going to go after Nick Saban. I mean, Saban left the game for a reason. So I don't think his name is going to surface by any means. So, and I'm not trying to say Urban Meyer is the only guy, but really, where are you going to go? Are you going to hire from within? I guess that's where you're probably going to go now for an interim until you find somebody. Because with all these coaches that are pretty much entrenched now after the from Thanksgiving up until pretty much the latter part of last week, like all these coaching vacancies have been filled. So I don't know what's going to happen there. I throw out Urban Meyer just for the hell of it. I don't know if he wants to coach again. I don't know if he wants to resurrect his career in that regard. Now, what happened in Jacksonville, that's the NFL. So I'm not going to look at that. Yes, was it a bad optic? 1,000%. And when you bring him in, you're going to have to say, hey, none of this. We already had to deal with this thing with Sherrone Moore, and there's no way that we want to have anything close to that, let alone a scenario where you're going to have women that aren't your wife sitting in your lap at a bar, as it was in Cincinnati there when he was a coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So, yeah, I don't know what other coach you could throw in there. I know another was the Washington coach maybe. Listen, I'm the wrong guy to ask because of all these positions that have been filled. So that's what you have there with Michigan, just an ugly story. I hope he gets it straightened out, and I don't know about this arrest or this assault. Who knows? So maybe when the word came out, did he try to go after her? Did he try to threaten her? I don't know. This is, to me, as I'm sprinkling allegedly words, I wish I could have the graphic to put up there. But that's what you have. Just an ugly situation there in Ann Arbor, and let's see if they get a coach there to kind of erase the mess of what has transpired here over the last 20 hours or so. All right, now I'm going to turn my attention to the NBA, the hardwood, as I lace up the high tops. And, I mean, what could you say? I've said this now, I guess, the past couple of podcasts. And the only thing that I will say right here on December 11th, 2025 at 12:53 p.m., barring any major injury, and think about it, the team already suffered an injury to one of their big players, arguably and probably their second best player on the team, who missed, I believe, 18 to 20 games to start the year? And now here we are, 25 games in, almost a third of the season in, and the Oklahoma City are 24-1, which matches the best start in NBA history. That being the Golden State Warriors of the 2015-16 season, when they started off 24-0 before losing their first game there in Milwaukee after winning in Boston the night before. So here's some numbers I want to throw at you. And when you think about the perspective and even the gravity of what the Thunder are doing right now. And mind you, that player that I was referring to, Jalen Williams, again, missed the first bulk of the season and have not missed a beat. 29-1, 36-2, 37-4. I bring up those three numbers because those are the other benchmarks that we're going to look at here. Because after they went 24-1, excuse me, the Warriors won 5 in a row before their second loss. And then after that, they won 7 in a row before they got loss number 3. And then they actually lost 2 out of 3 during that stretch to where they were 37-4, which is the exact halfway point of the season. Now, those are going to be barometers that I know I will look at, and hopefully by me relaying it to you guys and gals, that you also look at here as we move it along. Now, mind you, the Thunder are in the midst of a 16-game winning streak, on top of starting the year 8-0, with the one loss in between, losing to Portland. And there are some similar parallels here. Remember, the Warriors in 2014-15 won the championship. And they followed up the next year, the regular season, with that start. And those records leading up to 37-4. And obviously we know about 73-9. And we know how it ended. Losing a Game 7 when they were up 3-1. Draymond gets suspended. Kyrie and LeBron go off in Game 5. Go back home, win Game 6. And we know Kyrie the shot. Stephen Curry awful in Game 7. And the Cavaliers, the only team in NBA history to come back from a 3-1 deficit to dethrone, which would have been arguably the best team of all time in NBA history. Now the question is, will this team match that? And I'm going to say this one more time. Oh, I didn't say it before, but I'll say it now. Barring any other major injury, more so maybe the SGA, but who knows? If Jalen Williams goes down, Chet Holmgren, who knows? I think this team is going to eclipse 73-9. I mean, why not? How could they not? I mean, did you see what happened last night? They beat the Phoenix Suns in the quarterfinal game of the NBA Cup, and I'll get to that in a second. They beat them 138-89. Almost 50 points. And listen, the Suns have been overachievers. Give it up. Trading away Kevin Durant, saying bye-bye to Bradley Beal, trying to incorporate, Dylan Brooks, bringing some edge, attitude, etc. And they've actually played well. And Oklahoma City toyed with them to the point where SGA left the game. I think he had, I forgot how many points he had. He may have had 30-something points. He left the game with 3 minutes to go, and they were up by 30-some-odd points. Maybe it was like 39 or maybe 43, I forgot. And at one point, they led by more than 50. I mean, they're just killing teams. So why would I think that they cannot threaten or even beat the 2015-16 Warrior record? I mean, listen, I understand there's still 2/3 of the season to go. And I get it. Anything can happen throughout this season. But it's not as if they're winning these games by 2 points, 3 points. They're edging out these victories. I mean, they're not even breaking a sweat and winning these games. So why would I think otherwise? So, and I will say this. And their point differential, I mean, their point differential is sick. Last time I checked, what was it, like 15? Now it's even more than that. It may be 17 points at this point. Especially after last night. So the Thunder are averaging, I believe, 122 points a game. As I pull it up here. No, now it's 123.6. And they're giving up 106.2. So do the math. They are beating people on average by 17 points a game. Hello? Why would I think that they can't threaten and beat the best regular season record of all time? Now, we all know they're going to have to win a title. I mean, you can't be that dominant in the regular season and then just suffer through the playoffs. And as it was, the Warriors that year, they pretty much breezed to the playoffs until they got to the final. And when they got to a final, they're up 3-1 and still lost. But we shall see. And the Thunder will play the Spurs in the semifinal on Saturday for the NBA Cup. I was hoping to beat the Lakers. That would have been really good to have LeBron, Luka go up against that team. But you are going to have the upstart Spurs. No Victor Wembanyama. You saw him on street clothes last night as they beat up the Lakers there out in LA. And then to flip it over to the Knicks. Now, they beat Toronto the other night, and they'll play Orlando, who beat Miami, where tonight you're going to have the doubleheader, I believe. Is it still 6 and 9? Let me just double check. And of course, I'll take a look at the schedule here over the course of the next few days. Oh, no, I said tonight, Saturday. I got Thursday on the brain. They're going to play Saturday, where 5:30, New York at Orlando, in Vegas, and then San Antonio at Oklahoma City, because of Oklahoma City with the better record, and of course, they're the home team, at 9 p.m. Now, for the Knicks fan, are you geeked up? Are you pumped up that you're in the semifinals? Do you want to win an NBA Cup? Does it matter to you to win an NBA Cup? Listen, I get it. You haven't won any sort of championship in 53 years. And this is small potatoes, people. I get it. Is it something that you can hang your hat on, maybe build for the rest of the season if you win? Don't get to a final and lose. And again, would anybody really care or would it really matter in the grand scheme of things? Probably not. But maybe for the Knicks fan, they could say, hey, we won the NBA Cup in-season tournament. Listen, the Lakers won the first year, and they actually put a banner up there, which Kobe and Jerry West, Wilt, they were spinning in their graves. I mean, seriously, an NBA Cup banner raised to the rafters? Did the Bucks do that? I don't even know if the Bucks did that, because remember, they won last year, and this is the third year of this. So, I don't know. If I'm a Knicks fan, I'd be on the fence. I'd be like, yeah, it'd be cool, but I want the real championship, not this in-season tournament nonsense. That's just me. But that's what you have with the NBA here in this early part of the week. So we'll keep an eye on that as the games will be on Saturday. But as far as the schedule, you have the Clippers in Houston, Boston, Milwaukee, Portland at New Orleans, Denver, Sacramento. Tomorrow, Chicago, Charlotte, Atlanta, Detroit, Indy, Philly, Cleveland, Washington. Yeah, these slated games are not good. Minnesota, Golden State, maybe. Then on Sunday, because the only games Saturday are the Cup semifinals, Washington at Indy, Charlotte, Cleveland, Philly, Atlanta, Milwaukee at Brooklyn, Sacramento, Minnesota, New Orleans, Chicago, LA at Phoenix, Lakers that is. All right, not bad. And then Golden State at Portland. So not a great schedule. And you have at least the games on Saturday to chew on if you're into the NBA Cup. And other than that, I think that's it. Any news and notes in the association? No, you don't have anything there. So that concludes that. And then the NHL is actually rather quiet. I wish I could bring up something, anything. What am I going to do? Bring up Colorado and how they've been killing people? Let's see. Victor Hedman's still out. The defenseman of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Gary Bettman, the revenue should hit $6.6 billion, or 6.8 that is. Fantastic. Evgeny Malkin on IR with an upper body injury. I mean, this is what's happening in the sport. And I could go through the schedule, which I will do because the last few Thursdays I have not. And I don't know what's gone on in my brain here as to why that's the case. But, yeah, when you take a look, I know on Monday I talked about how the Eastern Conference was crazy, where the Metropolitan was separated from top to bottom by 7 points, and then the Atlantic was separated by 8. Now it's separated by 9. And not do you expect the Sabres to be hanging in the mix as far as any type of playoff or wild card or anything like that. But, yeah, I wish I had more to tell you people. I mean, really, I'm supposed to talk about Carter Hart, who's coming off of that issue many years ago, the sexual assault case, and had been reinstated in the league, where now they're in Philadelphia, where he's not going to start tonight, as it's been reported. Remember, he was formerly of the Flyers and now is on the Vegas Golden Knights, who just finished their trip here in the tri-state area playing the Rangers, Devils, and Islanders. And for the Vegas Knight goalie, I mean, is that something I'm going to really wrap my arms around as far as big-time news and notes throughout the league? And Colorado, again, now as well as they played, Dallas is nipping at their heels. They're 2 points behind them in the standings. They actually have the same amount of wins, but 21-2-7 for Colorado, 21-5-5 for the Stars. And then you have Anaheim still leading the way. 2 points behind them are Vegas. 3 points behind them are the Kings. There isn't much. I'm sorry, people. I wish I could expound more. I wish I could tell you of some whatever type of storylines or anything that could really be something to sink your teeth into, but there isn't. And as far as the schedule, let's see if we got anything cooking. Big slate of games tonight. San Jose, Toronto, who's played better, by the way, after their slow start. I talked about that on Monday. Anaheim, now they make their trip through the tri-state area. They're playing the Islanders tonight. They play the Devils Saturday afternoon, and then they play the Rangers Monday night at the Garden. So for those who want to see the Pacific-leading Anaheim Ducks, if you want to go check them out, now's your time to do so. The only time they're going to head into town. Vegas at Philly, Montreal, Pittsburgh, Carolina, Washington, Ottawa, Columbus, St. Louis, Nashville, Boston, Winnipeg, Dallas, Minnesota, Detroit and Edmonton, Florida, Colorado, Buffalo, Vancouver. Tomorrow, Chicago, St. Louis, Seattle, Utah. No big whoop there. Saturday, Anaheim, Jersey, San Jose, Pittsburgh, Tampa at New York to play the Islanders. So Tampa's here for a couple of days. They're playing the Devils tonight, and then they'll play the Islanders on Saturday, and that's afternoon, I believe, right? 3:30. Edmonton at Toronto. Montreal, New York, Carolina, Philly, Vegas, Columbus, Washington, Winnipeg. Vegas, as you can tell, on a long road trip here. Detroit, Chicago, Florida, Dallas, Nashville, Colorado, Calgary, LA. And then Sunday, Vancouver, New Jersey. I guess Vancouver's going to come to town for a few. Yeah, they'll play the Rangers on Tuesday. I believe the Islanders Friday, or maybe Thursday. Utah, Pittsburgh, Philly, Carolina, Boston, Minnesota, Edmonton, Montreal, Buffalo, Seattle. Now, Edmonton, Toronto, Montreal. Let me throw this in before I bid adieu. And this was good for the Oilers. As you know, I've been following this team with McDavid, and I know we resigned 2 years, etc. But do you know this is their final East Coast trip of the year? And they won't even hit Christmas, or even Christmas Eve for that matter. And for a team that's been floundering, that is really underachieved, have not played well. I don't want to say McDavid has been off, but he's not even in the top 5 in scoring when you think about it. And if I pull that up real quick, when we look at the stats, he is currently, I take that back. He's actually had a bit of a stretch here where he's second in points behind Nathan McKinnon. But check it out. 10 days ago, he wasn't even in the top 5. So now he's got a bit of a stretch. I know one game he had 2 goals, 2 assists. So that maybe that propelled him to get to being the top 2. But Edmonton, after going to Toronto, Montreal, Saturday, Sunday, They're in Pittsburgh Tuesday, Boston on Thursday, and that's it. They're done with the East Coast overall. Because remember, they started, their first road trip was through New York to Detroit and Ottawa, and then they had that 7-game trip, which went Philadelphia to Washington to Carolina to Tampa to Columbus to Florida, and they concluded that road trip in Florida. So, yeah, this is it. So a lot of their trips are going to be Midwest and pretty much in the Mountain and Pacific time zone. So kudos to them, and maybe they could catch up in the standings, because right now, Edmonton, they are 4th place, 32 points, 13, 11, and 6. So maybe after this final trip, or maybe starting now, they will at least catapult themselves to know that they're not going to have a ton of travel and maybe get themselves in the thick of things there when it comes to not only the Pacific Division, but maybe even go further up when it comes to the Western Conference. And before I sign off, let me just see, any of the other headlines come through? Well, the Braves added Robert Suarez, 2 years or 3-year deal. Listen, they re-signed Raisel Iglesias, but he's no longer effective as a closer in my eyes. So I guess he'll be an 8th inning guy. 3 years, $45 million. Was on the Padres, of course. 40 saves and 45 chances. And the Braves get their closer. Well, kudos to them. And I believe he's, 34 years of age? Is that right, as I see here? So the Braves have fortified their bullpen to bring in a guy like that. All right, good signing. Braves, see if they can bounce back after a dreadful year last year. So one guy off the board as far as a relief pitcher goes. We know about Edwin Diaz. We know about Devin Williams. And now Robert Suarez is off the market there, signing that 3-year deal with Atlanta. And that'll do it, my good people. Another episode just about the books. As always, thank you so much for stopping by, carving out precious time out of your day to listen to what it is I have to say about the toy department of life, otherwise known as sports. And as I mentioned earlier, I'll say it one last time. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. It'll help me out in a big way for an independent creator as well as podcaster to try to get to 1,000 subscribers 3 weeks from today, which I know is ambitious, but I've been putting up a ton of shorts. I got a lot of content, live streams that I've been putting up, so you want to stay tuned to the channel. And if you could do so, send it to your family, friends, foes, frenemies. Take a screenshot, send it to me on social media. I'll splash it everywhere. And if you could do that, I'd appreciate it. The socials, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, the JAYREELZ Podcast, or on Instagram, JAYREELZ. Twitter, JAYREELZ1, just the number. I'm also on Twitch, people. Twitch is another one. I just, on a whim, yesterday. So JAYREELZ1, again, just a number for those who want to follow me there. And then, of course, if you want to hit me up with a question, comment, or suggestion, you can do it the old-fashioned way by going to the JAYREELZ Podcast at gmail.com. I'll be more than happy to follow up with you guys and gals, because whether you do or do not know, this is what I love to do, people. In the blood and the DNAs, I'm trying to close out the year and try to go into next year flying high. This is it. Your boy will continue to put out passionate work, entertaining, informative, no clickbait, no rage bait. This is true, real, passionate sports talk. Made by a fan for you guys and gals, the fan. Your source for all the sauce in the world of sports. You get it right here. Not just the NBA, not just the NFL, not just Major League Baseball, not just the NHL. You'll get golf, you get tennis, you get boxing, you get MMA. Where else are you going to get all that on one podcast? Right here, people. So, just like I said, where else are you going to get this passion, fire, energy, fury with my thoughts, opinions, critiques, praise, analysis, feelings on anything and everything? That happens on the world of the diamond, ice, gridiron, hardwood, golf course, racetrack, tennis court, boxing ring, octagon, you name it. From my lips to your ears, from my heart to your soul, from where I am to wherever you are, the JAYREELZ Podcast always comes correct, direct, and in full effect. From the South Bronx, the South Beach, the South Central, the South Pacific, and all points beyond. Peace, love, and God bless, everybody. And until next time on the JAYREELZ Podcast, on the flip, baby.